Hi, I'm Lauren Sorensen. I'm the Digital Projects and Data Manager for Virtual Tribunals and the product owner for the Nuremberg Trial Archive in Arclight Workcycle. And welcome to the demo video for the second sprint and the first recorded video demo of the Nuremberg Trial Archives, which will be referred to as NTA. We are now 3 weeks into our 11-week work cycle. So let's hear now from the team about work progress from this most recent 2-week sprint.
Hi, I'm Gary. I'm the UX designer for the NTA project. I'm going to start by describing some of the major challenges that we've had with the Nuremberg Trial Archive project to kind of set the stage for the rest of the demo. In the planning stage leading up to this work cycle, we realized we sort of had three major challenges to this project. The first of these has to do with the data and just getting the NTA data in the right format for Arclight. And I think Lauren's going to talk about that a little bit later in the demo. And then we had two major challenges related to developing the application itself. One of these has to do with the fact that the NTA project is based on Arclight, and Arclight itself was not really in the desired state for us to begin basing NTA on it. And then the other challenge with the application has to do with the unique aspects of the NTA project itself and the fact that it's a single collection. And so I'm going to briefly just talk about each of those last two challenges. Arclight is a open source community-based project that Stanford and a small number of other institutions have worked together to create. But the last work cycle on Arclight was about 2 years ago, and we left that work cycle with the application in pretty good functional state, but not quite a polished version 1 kind of state. And it hadn't really been tested by anybody in a serious way. And so there were definitely some rough edges and some unknown aspects to the application. However, after that last community work cycle ended over 2 years ago, a small number of institutions began to stand up production implementations of Arclight at their institution. And in doing so, they spent a lot more time looking at the current state of the application and sort of thinking about how to make it more polished and thinking about how to improve it. A few institutions, most notably Duke, put a lot of effort into really rethinking some of the aspects of the application and made some fairly significant changes to the user interface of the application. And so when we were doing user research leading up to the work cycle, we really started to analyze these updates that Duke had made and realized that there were really some good improvements they made. And we really didn't want to base the NTA site on the current version of Arclight when we realized that there were some significant improvements that we could make to it based on the ideas that Duke had done, because Duke made all these great changes and has a production implementation, but it's the changes they made are in their own repository and not back in the community repository. So our first challenge was just that we wanted to figure out how to update the community core version of Arclight to take advantage of some of the improvements that we had seen by the more recent implementations. The team, in the last few weeks, the team has been making a lot of updates to core Arclight, the community version of Arclight, and I think some of those we'll hear about in the rest of the demo. But that's one big chunk of work that we've spent a lot of time working on. That is not directly, you don't see directly in the NTA site itself. And so then the other challenge with the application was the unique aspects of the NTA project itself, because Arclight is really designed as an application, it's designed to host multiple collections, really hundreds of collections usually, and often associated with multiple repositories. So even our demo application of the core Arclight has 3 repositories, and each of those can have as many collections as you want. But for the NTA project, we're really talking about a single collection in Arclight. And so that poses some challenges to us because if you have a single collection, you really want to have, like, for example, here is a mock-up of a homepage where you can sort of introduce the user to the collection and encourage them to explore the collection. This page doesn't exist in the community version of Arclight because it's more search-oriented to find the items you want from many collections. And then there's pages like this that list repositories, pages like this that list the collections that are in a repository. And again, if you have a single collection, none of this repository stuff is relevant. And also, we have a lot of features in Core Arclight that assume you have multiple collections. So like this control here, where you can look at your search results that are grouped by collection. This doesn't make sense for NTA because we only have one collection. So a lot of the work that we've been doing on the NTA application side on our Arclight instance for NTA is not only simple, updates to the visual design to reflect Stanford, but thinking about some new features that are going to be specific to the NTA instance of Arclight, such as the homepage, and then removing all these references to repositories, removing the references to that all collections, like the collection group by collections, search result option, and things like that. These are all mockups I've shown, but that's kind of a summary of the challenges that the team has been working on. And I think I'll turn it over to, Marlo now to start talking about some of the actual updates we've made in the applications.
Thank you so much, Gary, for sharing those mockups. My name is Marlo. I'm a developer on the Access team. And I think what I'm going to present now is sort of the areas of implementation of the mockups that Gary just shared that we were able to get to in the past sprint. It's really exciting. We were able to contribute them into the community Arclight core and then inherit them into our NTA instance. So yeah, I'll just quickly demonstrate which features we were able to get in this sprint. There's still a lot of work to be done on these designs on our part to implement them. So just keep that in mind. But let me point out the major features we were able to get done. So first of all, the tabbed layout that you saw Gary present has been totally removed. In particular, I'll point out that the access info for the collection has been taken out of its tab and moved into this collection overview access and use section. This is for the collection level here. We also moved the online content out of the tab layout and into this it's sort of information about what elements of the collection are viewable online. We took that out of the tab and moved it into this kind of info box here, and you're able to run a search from that box to demonstrate which content is online. This will probably change in the layout since all of our collection is online for Nuremberg, but this for now serves to show what we did in the core Arclight, even though it's likely to change here. If I click into a component here on the side, we can see some of the other changes that were made. The last big change really is the kind of collection contents navigation itself that you just saw me navigate. That was moved out of a section above the tab layout, I believe, and moved into the sidebar. And this change was one of the major changes that Duke had made that we had feedback in the community as being highly desirable for a change to the core code base. So yeah, you can navigate the specific components in the sidebar, and it's highlighted in the tree to understand where you are. And the expand and collapse feature kind of keeps the amount of data that you're exposed to at one time more manageable from a UI perspective. So yeah, those are some of the elements of Gary's design that we were able to contribute to the core Arclight code base this sprint. And I guess the next thing I'll dig into are some of the changes that we made regarding the fact that NTA is only a single collection, and Gary explained that really well just now. I'll move on to this screen where you can see I've done a search for a specific term and I get some results back. You'll see that the group by collection option in the search results has been removed since that's not relevant. And also the option to search by collection was part of this dropdown here, and we've also removed that. We also removed the request button just because this collection is presented in a digital form, and we're not going to be fielding requests for folders in a reading room that might be typical in other archives. We added the option to download the EAD for the entire collection here. So that will spit out a huge XML file of the whole Nuremberg trial collection. We added bookmarking functionality here. You can see it adds to this note in the top bar here, and that just involves some customization of adding like a specific backend module essentially to enable that working for NTA. And yeah, obviously we added the Stanford Libraries branding and theming. We have the top bar here, and in the footer, there's sort of the context for the larger Stanford Libraries organization.
So my name is Lauren. I am the product owner and data manager for this project. I'm going to be talking about the data modeling process and some of the data remediation that we did. So in our last update, we talked about changing the data model, and following the news that we would be using archive space, we created a new data model, which is this here. And from there, worked on evaluating the data for transformation into EAD format, so included archival description, using the DAX content standard. This resulted in a spreadsheet. This is an example of that spreadsheet, just a sample of it, which outlines the required fields in DAX and EAD schema matched up with the existing data, as well as requesting additional scope and content data from the subject experts and providing a selection of new data. We held a meeting with Center for Human Rights and International Justice staff and school curator Regina Roberts, and a template was created for submitting that information, which will be done by November 17th. Following this, we outlined some data remediation and additions needed in order to conform to DAX EAD. An example of this includes splitting one of the date fields into two, the start and the end, that are currently merged into one field. There are also additions to the data as mentioned, and these are extent number for the subseries for item, extent type, reference ID for all of the levels, a child indicator for the container display, scope and content as mentioned, Perl, and Druid. Once the sample data was created from the existing 12 series full data set spreadsheets, these fields, mostly repeating, were entered into the uploader spreadsheet tool. This was uploaded into Archive Space Staging Server under the NTA collection record. After some error troubleshooting, the sample data series, subseries, file where applicable, and items appeared in the collection record. Those are the different levels, by the way. This allows us to have a proof of concept for the bulk of the data, and we are now working on finalizing that each and every field renders in Arclight. Next steps for this include confirming the fields rendered, like I just said, prepping the full data set and inputting the fields above that we just mentioned that needed to be added, remediation on dates as mentioned above, and adding the name of the language alongside the language script abbreviation. And that is all from me.
All right, so this part of my presentation will be really brief and rolls off of what Lauren was just speaking about with the data in archive space. But as you can see here in the sidebar, we have the data in Arclight that Lauren was able to upload into archive space. So I want to point out that during this sprint, we were able to essentially complete that part of the data pipeline for this project. We were able to write a API client that connects to the archive space API to grab the source data and get it into our NTA Arclight. So all of the data you see here is indexed from that pipeline and comes directly from archive space. Yeah, and then another, I guess the last kind of development win that is worth mentioning somewhat along these lines is that we were able to get continuous deployment set up for our staging and production servers. So we should be able to deploy the app to different platforms and get content indexed with more ease going forward.
This is Nick on the Access team. I'm going to talk a little bit more about our progress modernizing Arclight's code base during this iteration. We have continued to smooth out any UI inconsistencies resulting from the transition to Bootstrap 5, like the appearance of the main search bar. And we improved the appearance of some pages, like the repositories page on devices with smaller screens. Other fixes included finalizing the removal of the deprecated jQuery JavaScript library and shifting to the use of the more modern tooling from the Hotwire framework. Hotwire now powers components like the responsive truncator and collection navigator, which improves the user experience, particularly for dynamically loaded content. The newest version of the collection navigation widget pairs Hotwire's Turbo library with parent-child relationship indexing in the Solr search engine, which helps reduce the overall complexity of this feature. After we refactored Arclight's embed widget to use Hotwire's stimulus library, we were able to achieve embedded display of Stanford Digital Repository content without additional configuration. In the future, we're hoping to add highlighting of search terms overlaid on document images shown in the viewer for the Nuremberg trial archive.